grave news from the east began trickling to the court of Murad II. Shahrukh, the youngest son of Timur, and the
oh hell no. Not the Timurids. Not the Timurids again. Alright, look. Ottoman Empire.
Year is 1439.
I just woke up again. So
Catholic and Orthodox clergy
I already love the best. But I want to drop this video before I have to go do other stuff. Alright?
The day's meeting was subject to much passion and feverish debate regarding church doctrine, the sounds of grunts and shouting filling the hall. The Emperor of the Romans, John VIII Palaiologos, sat on an elevated throne overlooking the procession, trying not to look desperate and panicked. He knew that the result of this council could mean life or death for Constantinople and Roman civilization as a whole. The Ottomans would come knocking at his gates sooner rather than later, and when they did, support from the West would be crucial if his feeble empire was to survive.
Bro, would I even
When
call
your
that
empire is gradually
an empire at that point? I wouldn't even call it an empire at that point, man.
Rebelling Ottoman princes and defeated a number of Turkic beys in Anatolia. Although the local forces of the Byzantine Emperor repelled the latest Ottoman siege on Constantinople, many other Byzantine settlements had fallen to the armies of Murad in quick succession. Thessaly and Nicomedia, in addition to their coastal hinterlands, were swiftly captured by the local Ottoman marcher lords, while down south, the Hexamilian Wall was breached by Ottoman raiders, resulting in the sacking of many Byzantine settlements in the Peloponnese. More worrying for the joint government of Manuel II and his son John VIII was the Ottoman siege on Thessalonica, the second largest city in the empire. During the Ottoman interregnum, Thessalonica had been given to the senior emperor's nephew and rival claimant John VII, and his minor son Andronikos V, but the pair had died in 1408 and 1407 respectively, thus bringing an end to Andronikos IV's side of the imperial dynasty. In the years after, Thessalonica was given to Manuel II's third eldest living son, Andronikos, who oversaw a lengthy period of relative peace and prosperity for the city. Nevertheless, with an Ottoman army now at his gates and lacking the resources to mount a proper defense, the Byzantine despot decided to give control of the city to the Venetians in the hopes they would repel the invaders. By the early fall of 1423, the transfer of power between the two states was completed, and a sizable Venetian garrison was installed in Thessalonica, thus officially ending over 1,500 years of on and off Roman rule in the city. In spite of
Bro, I'm still freaking sick. How desperate do you have to be, bro? Damn, just to like give up your second largest city. How desperate do you have to be? Also, was this real? Was this actually real?
Tensions immediately rose between the local Orthodox inhabitants of the city and their new Catholic overlords, as the latter was accused by the former of curtailing their economic rights and the rights of the local Orthodox Church. As a result, the population of the once prosperous Thessalonica had fallen to 10,000 by the end of the decade, as many Byzantines fled en masse into Ottoman lands, deeming that life under the Venetians was akin to slavery.
Wow.
As the Ottoman grip around Thessalonica,
I thought that freaking I honestly thought the Venetians would treat them quite nice. Wow. Speaking of which, I gotta go do some Italian Wars reaction videos, bruh.
To the west, like his father and grandfather
I was supposed to do that for a while, but I forgot. I honestly forgot.
Putting his teenage brother Constantine in charge of the imperial capital, the junior Byzantine emperor traveled to Venice, Milan and Hungary, but obtained nothing beyond a few empty pledges. Back in Constantinople, local Byzantine representatives signed a desperate peace treaty with Edirne in 1424, thus bringing the 3-year conflict with the Ottomans to an end. Much of the gains of the Treaty of Gallipoli, signed back in 1403, were erased, as John VIII's gamble to destabilize the Ottoman realm upon the death of Mehmed I had failed to bear fruit. Once again, Constantinople became a vassal state to Edirne, and was forced to pay a yearly tribute of 21,000 hyperpera to Murad II. The lands of the Byzantine realm were now reduced to a portion of the Morea, a number of the scattered islands in the Aegean, Constantinople and its hinterland, and a thin line of settlements dotted across the Thracian Black Sea coast up to Mesembria. The following year, the 75-year-old Manuel II died after a turbulent 34-year reign. He would be remembered as a dogged emperor who kept his dying empire alive against all odds, stemming the tide of more powerful rulers like Sultan Bayezid I.
Yo, respect, bro. Manuel tried. Yo, Manuel tried everything, man. He really did.
Peace between Adana and Constantinople re-established for the time being, the tightening Ottoman siege on Thessalonica still persisted, as Murad refused to recognize the Venetian acquisition of the city. War engulfed the Aegean Sea once more, as Ottoman raiders plundered a number of Venetian colonies in the region, while the Doge's navies began blockading the Dardanelles Strait. In spite of declaring war on Adana, Venetian resolve to defend Thessalonica was lacking in comparison to their colonies in the Aegean, as many in Venice saw the former Byzantine city as an expensive and fruitless venture. After 7 long years of besiegement, Ottoman forces, under the personal command of the Sultan, managed to scale the land walls of Thessalonica successfully and descended into the city, plundering and slaughtering their way to the fleeing Venetians in the harbour. The 15th century Byzantine historian John Anagnostis, who was also an eyewitness to the sack of the city, blamed the Venetian garrison for the bloody event, as they prevented the local rulers of Thessalonica from peacefully transferring the city to Ottoman authorities as they did back in 1387.
How in the world do people find primary sources for history? If you don't know what primary sources mean, oh my god, I really hope that you know what that means. Anyone who likes history should know what primary source means, but it basically just means like a personal account, like from a person that was there, like a diary or I don't know, a memory, recollection or something. Like, how do people find these primary sources of events? I would love to know, like, how do they find these sources, man? Like, where do you find these primary? Because secondary sources, they're not hard to find. Secondary sources are just like people rewriting events that a primary source already said. But how do they find like a primary source itself, especially for a time period like this? Where did he get that info, right? Of the eyewitness, that's the primary source. Where did he get that info? Like where did he get that information from? You know what I mean? Like,
almost 3 decades after falling out of Ottoman control, the banners of Islam were hoisted over the second city of the Byzantine realm once more.
Italian sausage, bacon and
as Thessalonica fell to Murad, a number of Ottoman military operations were also launched, directed at Albania and Epirus. The Despotate of Epirus was one of the Byzantine successor states established in the aftermath of the sack of Constantinople during the Fourth Crusade, back in 1204. Ruled by a branch of the former Imperial Angelos dynasty, the despotate achieved its military and economic height during the 1220s as the newly established Empire of Thessalonica.
Ooh, that's kind of
thick.
After its
devastating and decisive defeat to Bulgaria at the Battle of Klokotnitsa in 1230, the state steadily contracted in land and influence over the next century.
Wow.
Nevertheless, the despotate chugged along during the 1300s under new Italian leadership, which saw it maintain its autonomy against a number of foes, mainly the Serbians and Byzantines. Fast forward to the 15th century, Epirus, under its new ruler, despot Carlo II Toko, became the subject of much attraction for Adana. After his ascension to the Ottoman throne in 1429, the illegitimate cousins of the newly crowned Epirus ruler appealed to the court of Murad II for military aid in order to secure their self-proclaimed inheritance over the country. As a result, an Ottoman force struck deep into Epirus in 1430 and captured its capital Ioannina with little resistance. What resulted was a new peace being established between the various factions of the Tokug dynasty, and Kolo II continues to rule from the town of Arta as an official Ottoman vassal. For the last century, the various lords and rulers of Albania had often played off their more powerful neighbours like the Venetians, Serbians and the Ottomans against one another in order to maintain their autonomy. However, since the reign of Mehmed I, Edirne's interest...
Bro, where did Albanian people come from? Where did Albania... Who are Albanian people? Like, actually, where did Albanian people come from? Albanian people were blank. Literally blank on historical records until like the 12th century, I think. I think all of a sudden they just appeared. It's like, that's weird. Where in the world did Albanian people come from?
The mountains of Albania became evident as more and more military campaigns were launched into the region, culminating in the conquests of Flori and Kruja back in 1417.
No one even knows where Albanian language come from.
Albanian lords began submitting to Ottoman vassalage in droves, and even began sending their sons and heirs to the Ottoman court as political hostages. Meanwhile, the Timar and Devshirme systems were introduced across the wider region, while the unpopular jizya tax on non-Muslims was instituted on Catholic and Orthodox Albanians alike. After languishing under unpopular Islamic rule for years, the war between the Venetians and the Ottomans gave many dissatisfied Albanian lords the opportunity to revolt against their Ottoman overlords, which they did in 1428, forging an alliance with the Doge of Venice. Many of these lords wished to retake their seized lands from the Timur-holding Ottoman provincials of the region, and so a bloody struggle began in earnest over the local region. In spite of early Albanian successes, after the fall of Thessalonica in 1430, Venice signed a separate peace treaty with Edirne, thus leaving the Albanian lords on their own in their struggle for independence. Between 1432 and 1436, Ottoman forces systematically defeated the disunited Albanian nobility one by one, and by the end of the military campaign, all of Albania was put under direct Ottoman rule.
And thus, the influence of Islam, which still persists with us today, begins in Albania. LOL. I always say, oh yeah, Albanians are like a product of Ottoman rule. Literally,
as
bro.
Albania enters the Ottoman orbit,
actually,
an opportunity to bring Serbia...
I would argue the reason why the Balkans is even Muslim is because of the Ottomans. It's just a product of Ottoman rule.
Back into the fold also arose for Edirne. Under its ruler, Stefan Lazarevic, the Serbian despotate had drifted out of Ottoman vassalage during the aftermath of the Battle of Ankara in 1402,
only to become a Hungary vassal
between the Ottomans and Hungary. However, with the sudden death of the childless Stefan in 1427, the reconciled noble and former rebel Juraj Branković became the new ruler of Serbia with Hungary's political backing. In return for helping him secure the Serbian throne, Juraj surrendered the great Danube fort city of Belgrade to Buda and became an official Hungarian vassal. Back in Edirne, Murad II responded to these ongoing political developments by claiming Serbia for himself on the grounds of his grandfather's marriage to Stefan's sister Olivera back in 1390. In 1428, an Ottoman army stormed into Juraj's territories and temporarily occupied the old capital of Kruševac, thus forcing Serbia to become an Ottoman vassal once more.
Wow.
As a result of the war, the
Hungary did nothing. Hungary did nothing. Wow, okay.
The fortress of Golubac was transferred to Ottoman forces, thus giving Edirne a staging ground to conduct future military operations in Hungary. Lastly, wanting to consolidate his power further in Serbia, Murad II also married a daughter of the Serbian despot in 1435, Mara Branković. Not just a wallflower, Mara would become a trusted advisor of the Sultan on political developments coming out of Europe for the next 2 decades.
What is with the Serbians and helping the Ottomans so well? What is with the Serbians and helping the Ottomans? I mean, I swear, it's like they should be like the main ones. but they always turn out to be like the best vassals for the Ottomans, man.
The 1420s also saw Edirne reassert its power over Wallachia against the political interferences of Buda. The principality had become a battleground for both states during the decade, which saw the pro-Ottoman ruler Radu II contest control over the country against his cousin, the pro-Hungarian Dan II. The Wallachian throne changed hands 7 times between the two members of the Basarab family, which finally culminated in Dan II succeeding in permanently gaining control over the country as a Hungarian vassal in 1427. However, this status quo was not to last long, as the Wallachian voivode would be killed in 1432 during an Ottoman invasion that saw Edirne once again install its own puppet ruler in the country, Alexander I Aldea. In spite of his installment, the pro-Ottoman voivode suddenly fell seriously ill in 1435 and died the following year, thus prompting his half-brother, the pro-Hungarian Vlad II Dracul, to seize the throne. Luckily for Edirne, Vlad's close relationship with Buda was to be fleeting, as in 1437, his main political backer, King Sigismund of Hungary, died at the age of 69 without a male heir to succeed him. With peasant revolts sweeping across Hungary and political turmoil engulfing Buda, the Wallachian voivode decided to reconcile with Murad II and accepted Ottoman vassalage. In order to show his loyalty to his new liege lord, Vlad II contributed his forces to a great Ottoman raiding party headed to Transylvania in 1438, which saw the sacking of many Hungarian towns, including Sebeș and Brașov. While Murad II had been focused on Ottoman military operations in the Balkans, developments from Anatolia would put Edirne into a panic, as a tremendous eastern threat once again loomed over the Sultanate. By the start of the 1430s, the Karamanid Beylik under Ibrahim II Bey had broken the general peace in Anatolia and retook the Ottoman border settlements of Akşehir and Beyşehir for his realm, in addition to launching a significant siege on Amasya. In spite of the sudden outbreak of hostilities, like with the previous Ottoman Karamanid wars of the past, Edirne's military response was a swift one, which saw it quickly retake the 2 border towns and lift the siege on Amasya with the help of the Dulkadirid Beylik.
Okay.
However, right as Murad's armies were going to launch a final full-scale invasion of the Karamanids, grave news from the east began trickling to the court of Murad II. Shahrukh, the youngest son of Timur, and the
Oh hell nah. Not the Timurids. Not the Timurids again. Oh no.
leader of his father's former realm had launched a major military campaign against the Karaköyünlü in eastern Anatolia and Azerbaijan. Not since the days after the Battle of Ankara had Timurid armies come so close to the Ottoman border, which put an already paranoid Edirne into a complete panic. The ruler of the Karaköyünlü, Kara Iskender, fled to Ottoman lands after being defeated by the Timurids, thus putting strains on Edirne's relations with Shahrukh. However, what followed between the Ottomans and the Timurids was to differ from their original confrontation at the start of the century. Unlike the letters of threats and war seen with Bayezid I, letters of peace and homage came out of Murad II's palace to the Timurid ruler. The Ottoman Sultan reminded the Timurid emir that he was still in his suzerainty, and that their realms had been at peace since the days of their late fathers. Unlike Timur, the more peace-oriented Shahrukh accepted these Ottoman peace offers and marched his armies away from the Ottoman border as a gesture of goodwill as negotiations for Kara Iskender began. Soon enough, the exiled ruler of the Karaköyünlü learned of the transpiring relations between Murad and Shahrukh and fled to Azerbaijan, where he would be assassinated in 1436.
Well, so much for that. As a result
of this latest diplomatic episode with the Timurids, Murad refrained from invading the Karamanid Beylik and concluded a hasty peace treaty with Konya as a means not to upset his fragile peace with Shahrukh. Even though the Karamanids were off the table, the Ottoman Sultan did, however, take the time to re-establish rule amongst the petty beyliks of Genik and annex the region in a show of power by the end of the decade.
The Timurids, yo,
part of the
yo,
last
yo. I'm gonna say this in like all my videos because I'm like writing down. I'm like taking notes on like a bunch of books to read. If y'all know any books that I can read on the Timurids, bro, recommend it to me. Please do. Bro, I feel like Timurids could be my favorite faction throughout history.
Part of an ever-expanding Turkish world. After the military defeats of the 1420s, more Romans now lived outside the control of Constantinople than within. Increasingly, economic transactions in the imperial capital were being carried out in the Ottoman currency, as official Byzantine coinage slowly became obsolete in value. The Turkish language had infiltrated daily Roman life, as many Roman citizens could now speak it fluently when making transactions with Turkish merchants. When 15th century Byzantine philosophers...
Bro, how in the world do you learn a language that, like, you're so exposed to it that you eventually learn it? Jeez, man, that is wild to me. And they could speak it fluently. Bro, I'm trying to learn me a second language right now. Freaking hell. It is hell. I spend like 2 hours. I try to spend at least 2 hours a day. I try to learn at least 10 words per day, bruh. 10 words per day. Right? I'm trying to be able to communicate by in a year's time. I'm trying to be able to communicate in that language. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh wow. But to be able to speak it fluently, you know how many words that you need to know? Like 20,000 words, I think like 10. I don't even think 10,000 words. Nah, bro, you need to know at least 15 to 20,000. Oh my god. I'm just saying this because it's just crazy how the Turkish, like the Ottomans, just have such control that
philosopher and theologian
that their language is just fluent now, bro.
Himself from the charge of being pro-Catholic because he knew Latin. He'd responded that, by this logic, all of us are Muslims, for almost all of us use their language. Through the means of cultural and economic influences, it seemed to many that the Turkish world would swallow the remains of the Roman world in a few generations. However, even at this late date in their decline, the Byzantines looked for ways to unshackle themselves from the clutches of the Ottomans. Although expanding at the expense of Edena was not an option anymore, expansion in Morea against the various Latin powers of the region would prove to be a vital source of much-needed tax income for the central state. The Latin fortress towns of Klemutsi and Patras were seized by the emperor's younger brother, despot Constantine, in 1427 and 1429, while the latter and his younger brother, despot Thomas, thoroughly conquered the Principality of Achaia in 1432 and even made diplomatic strides to bring the Duchy of Athens to heel. Even in spite of these surprising military victories against the Latins, a unified plan for Roman revival was non-existent, as Constantine and Thomas often skirmished against their older brother Theodore over control over Morea, as all three men became despot over the same region.
Yeah, I heard that there could have been a possibility of a potential like Rome in this part of Greece. I didn't know much details about it. I just knew that it just didn't come to be.
Whatever the political situation in Morea, John VIII's great project during the 1430s was a push for union with Rome, in an attempt to gain much-needed military assistance against the Ottomans. Various emperors over the last 2 centuries, notably Michael VIII, John V, and Manuel II, had made significant overtures to the Pope regarding the matter, but all had failed to achieve any meaningful results. In spite of past failures, John was determined to get any military or fiscal help from the West. In November 1437, the Byzantine Emperor, his ecumenical patriarch, and hundreds of Byzantine officials sailed off to Italy to begin talks with the papacy to mend the almost 400-year-old Great Schism. The following Council of Florence lasted almost 2 years and saw tense debates between Catholic and Orthodox clergy regarding church doctrines, such as the topic of the use of leavened or unleavened bread during communion, Latin doctrine, the controversy surrounding the term filioque, and papal supremacy over the Eastern churches. After some significant
the last one isn't really bad to debate about, but Communion bread, bro. Bro, that's okay.
And John VIII's acceptance of the supremacy of Rome,
communion bread,
between the
bro.
two Christian churches, was re-established in 1439 to much celebration.
Shaking my head.
However, like with previous attempts to appeal to the Pope, the popular reaction to the council in Constantinople was primarily adverse. Many in the Byzantine capital still saw the Catholic Church as a foreign tyrannical power and continued on with the local Orthodox practices of their ancestors, seeing the whole event as a papal coup rather than a true union between the two churches. John's gamble of unifying the Eastern and Western churches had backfired. Rather than unifying Christendom, it instead resulted in a significant schism in the Eastern Orthodox Church. The patriarchs of Alexandria, Antioch, Jerusalem, and even the Russian Orthodox Church disowned the union.
Wow.
Yet, the younger brother of the emperor, despot Demetrios of Mesembria, rebelled against Constantinople and championed himself as an anti-unionist leader with Ottoman backing. Even though the rebelling despot was defeated in 1442, much of Roman society had soured against the imperial palace, but only time would tell if the council was to bring real military or fiscal results for the Emperor of the Romans against Murad II's war machine. In the next episode of our series on the early history of the Ottomans, we will look at the results for Byzantium as the Ottomans would be confronted with yet another Crusader army at their gates, this time converging at Varna. To ensure you don't miss that,
another Crusading army. Bro, how many Crusading armies have the Ottomans freaking saw? They're probably gonna get defeated. Look, man, thank you for watching the video. Go check out my other reactions on my channel if you like what I have to say in my videos. Don't forget to like and subscribe and enjoy.